Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the next episode of Change is Hard, y'all. We have a really special episode today. Our friend Cherry is going to be with us. And like Aaron, Cherry left what we now call a high control religion. And she grew up in Anderson, South Carolina in the 60s, early 70s. She's got some really wild and fun things and interesting and scary things to tell us. So get ready. So today we have, as I said, we have our good friend Cherry. She agreed to come on and speak with us about growing up in what we learned from our friend Bonnie Cleveland, the psychologist. Cherry grew up in a high control religion. Would you call it evangelical, Cherry?
It was definitely evangelical. I mean, my family started out in the Southern Baptist Church, and then we went to another church that became very strongly evangelical, and there's a big difference. They call them fundamental Baptist.
Okay, so could you tell us the general tenets of your church and what you were supposed to do and think and say?
Well, even with the Southern Baptist, it starts out, you've got to get saved. And they scared us to death. My first memory about anything about church was being in the church, and there was an evangelist there, because they love to have these big revivals. And the evangelist was there, and he was preaching. They love to preach fire and brimstone. You are going to hell, and if you don't accept Jesus as your Savior, you're going to hell. And I remember being 7 years old, being scared to death, standing at the end of the pew, wanting to go down to the altar to accept Jesus so I didn't die and go to hell that very night. So it started like that, but then there were other things that my mother refused to let us take any kind of dance lessons, even ballet. And, a lot of friends were doing that, but we could not. So my parents at some point left that Southern Baptist church and went to the fundamental church, and that's when it really got interesting.
Interesting. That's a word.
Yeah.
Interesting. Because those people decided at a certain point that the Southern Baptists were too liberal, and they needed to pull out of the Southern Baptist Convention. So we became a fundamental, independent Baptist church, and it kind of evolved. I grew up, women could pray in the church, but once they became fundamental, women could not pray in a mixed group. They could pray in their Sunday school class that were all women, but they could not pray anymore in the congregation. So that was one thing that happened. And then we got to the point where we were not supposed to wear pants. There was no speaking in tongues. It was not that kind of church. But fire and brimstone, and they loved the book of Revelation, which we talked about.
Mm-hmm. Those end times. Yeah. They are obsessed with those end times, man.
The end times and the Antichrist. They couldn't wait for all that to happen. And of course,
and then they voted for him.
They did vote for him.
Sorry, go ahead.
You're exactly right, Aaron. And I told my mother that. They voted for him. But, they believe that they're going to go up in the rapture before the really bad stuff happens. And if you're not saved, again, not only are you going to go to hell once you die, but you're going to have hell on earth during that period of the tribulation when the Antichrist rules the world.
Cherry, you've told me and possibly Aaron and Shay that one of the tenets of your church was to procreate greatly. Is that true? Did that start happening?
It did. If you've seen the movie, not the movie, the documentary about the group that the Duggars were in, 8 and counting. I'm trying to remember the name of the documentary, but it's about this man called Bill Gothard who never married, but he founded this group called Basic Youth Institutes and ATI. There's several different acronyms for his group, and all these people started going to it. My aunt and uncle went to it, and he believed that you should have as many children as God would give you. So the Duggars were very into that movement. My sister and her husband were into it. They had 10 children.
Whoa.
They had 8. He had a vasectomy. And then he felt convicted that he should not have had a vasectomy. And so he had it reversed, and they had 2 more.
Wow.
I have a cousin that has 10. My other cousins didn't quite go that route. One had 5, the other 2 had 3. But they're raising up what they call Joshua youth so that they could do exactly what they're doing now, take over and be the leaders in the country, and we would have a theocracy. That's what they had planned all along, and we are now seeing that happen.
Right. So that's the reason for having so many children, is so you could
take over America. Shiny happy people, I think, is that document.
Right.
Well, Cherry and I grew up very, very similar, and they take this from the book of Genesis, the very beginning of the Bible, where supposedly God tells Adam and Eve, be fruitful and multiply. So it's like you take this concept of the very first 2 people on planet Earth, apparently, populating the whole Earth, and then you're taking it to 21st century America as if it should still apply the same, even though global population is insane. But there's no critically applying thinking to the current situation. It's like what the Bible says we will do.
That's exactly right, because there's another verse about happy as a man that has a quiver
full quiver. Yeah.
The children are the arrows, so full quiver. But my family bought into that. My mother and daddy didn't. Now my sister actually went down. She was a wild teenager, so they sent her down with my aunt and uncle, and she actually went through some of Bill Gothard's training. Now she's still very much involved in the Fundamentalist Baptist Church, but she does not. She thinks some of those teachings were wrong. Of course, he's been discredited,
right,
and accused of inappropriate behavior with young women.
Shocking.
Or used. I have a feelings question. So when you were not allowed to take ballet, for instance, you said, of course, all our friends were. So that means that in one part of your life, everybody was kind of the same. But then in a different part of your life, you were actually the minority population. Is that right?
I mean, that's true, because my mother went to Bob Jones. She went there for college, and then she was, not all women went to college back then, but that's where she went. And even though we were in the Southern Baptist Church was kind of social, kind of like you say with Episcopalians, they were kind of that way. But my mother was not. So this was during the time when we were actually in the Southern Baptist Church, and all of my friends were taking tap, and I don't even know if I knew anybody had ballet, but no, we didn't take that. So it was different, even though when we were still in the Southern Baptist Church, my mother still believed stricter things than
they did.
Yeah.
So even inside of that culture, your family was its own little, even more intense subculture.
But they were not. I mean, they had all the flaws that everybody has. So they were not prim and proper about everything. So
all the flaws and none of the fun.
Exactly. That's
yay.
Yeah. None of the fun.
So you're talking about how you were different than your friends when you couldn't take dance. How else were you different than your friends who you knew in public school, about what you wore, what you were doing on Wednesday nights, or how you talked, what you thought?
Yeah, well, like Erin, we went to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night for prayer meeting. And then our church was at the point where we were not supposed to wear pants anymore at a certain point after they pulled out of the Southern Baptist Convention. And then once I got to high school, all of my friends were going to dances that they would have at other churches. The Episcopalians had one, the Methodists had one, they called them socials. And they would have a band and you could go dance. And I had to just absolutely pitch a fit to get to go. My parents finally gave in because I was kind of a hellion. So, I had this little makeup table and I had all these bottles of perfume and stuff, and I would run in my room and I'd start throwing all those bottles of perfume at the door. So I don't think they really knew what to do with me. My sister was kind of a rebel too. So they finally let me go to the dances. She ended up running away from home, and she actually spent at least 3 nights in jail. I want to even say a week after they caught her, because they said they thought it would be good for her to stay in jail.
And she's the one who went down with family members and got hooked up with.
Yeah, the Bill Gothard thing. So, yeah.
Okay, so how are you, as Shay asked, it sounds like you were rebelling against things like not going to dances. What else were you rebelling against?
Well, internally, and Erin has had a similar experience, I read everything I could get my hands on. So there was part of me just like, none of this crap is true. But what do? I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to get out of it. So gradually, little by little, I made escapes for brief periods of time, but I always was pulled back. And they use guilt to trap you there. And just, I would feel I remember sitting in church and feeling just so bad about everything that I did that they didn't believe in doing, even though really everybody did.
Oh, to have that guilt, that's awful.
Yeah, and especially about sex. There was a lot of guilt about sex, and we had that conversation, that something everybody does, but in that world, I don't know how they even husbands and wives have sex.
How are they having all these
right, exactly.
babies?
Have as many children as possible. Don't talk about sex at all. Don't talk about it.
And I even remember one time hearing a man say that you should not have sex unless it's for the purpose of procreation. And how ridiculous is that?
Yeah.
Because if that was the way God made us, then you wouldn't want, you'd be like a dog in heat. You wouldn't want to have sex when you want to eat.
Oh, gosh.
It takes something could be so good and healthy, and it twists you in knots about it. It's so unnecessary. Like, to this day, so unnecessary. That's all I think about it. It's like, just stop.
Yeah.
So unnecessary. And leads to so much abuse and so much shaming and so much it just buries everything, whereas it doesn't have to be that way. It's like, why are we doing this?
That's perfect, because women are not supposed to have sex drives. The men could have it, but if you're a woman, nobody ever taught me about that I was going to feel the same way as these boys were. So what are you supposed to do?
Feel bad about yourself. Right.
Yes, hate yourself. Right.
Yeah. Guilt and shame. Okay, so did you go to college right after high school?
I went to college, and that was one of my escape routes, and I loved it. We went to Clemson, which was only about 15 minutes away from home, and I liked it so much that I decided I needed to go to USC, because that'd be 2 hours from home.
Nice.
And I loved it. My sister and I both. She met this guy, got married, and left, and he was the one she had the 10 children with. So she quickly got out of it, but I stayed, and then ended up getting married right out of college, and it was a big mistake. But we had 2 kids together, and then we divorced, and I went home to mom and dad with the 2 kids.
Tell us how that went.
It was bad. I appreciated that they gave us a place to live, because I didn't have a job. I was working as a waitress, even though I had a college degree. It was hard to find something. So while we lived there, I went back to tech school and got a computer degree. And they helped me with my kids, and they helped me send them to the Christian school, which we talked about being Segregation Academy.
No, but explain this for the audience members, Segregation Academy.
Yeah.
In what time period this was?
Okay, so we're talking about the late 60s, when the schools started being integrated, and I think we had our first black person in my school when I was in the 6th grade. So around that time, a lot of the white churches started creating private schools, so their children would not have to go to school with blacks. So my mother and father helped start that school at the church, and my mother was actually the principal for a couple of years until they could find a man to do that job.
Oh, yeah.
So I was too old, thank you, Jesus, to not go to that school. So But my girls did go, and we were Erin and I were talking about this too. That there were pluses because it was a small school, so they got to do everything. They were in the plays, they got to be cheerleaders, and they would not have been able to do all those things if they'd been in a big public high school. So it has its ups and downs. And then I married another sucker, loser. It sounds like Trump. Those were my two ex-husbands. So, and that didn't last very long. And then we went back. And at that point in time, I became what I used to call the Baptist nun. So I was celibate and didn't date anybody for 10 years. But I mean, part of it was really good because I wanted my children to grow up and not have all these men in and out of the house and all that. So I think that was a good thing. But
did you need your parents' religious beliefs for you to make that choice? I mean, couldn't you have made that choice I bet you would have made that choice on your own. Do you think?
The choice
to not worry about men in your life, just be single.
Yeah, I think I would have because it was hard enough. My ex, their dad, was having one woman after another, and I mean, he ended up getting married, I think, like 6 times.
Oh goodness!
So they were getting that at his house, and it just, I mean, I saw what it was doing to them. I just wanted them to be happy and grow up and not have stepdads in and out and all that. So yeah, I think I would have, hopefully, but I don't know.
Were your husbands part of evangelical traditions? Is that part of what brought you together with them in the first place?
They were not. Now, this is really interesting because my first husband was, they didn't really, I mean, they went to church, but they were not, they were more like, you know, Episcopalian, Presbyterian, something like that. But my second husband was a Jehovah's Witness. I'm a total kook. And I studied with him for a while, and that was easy to say, nah, I don't believe that. But we split up after 4 years, so yeah, that. And then when my kids grew up, and the last one was, I had 2 daughters, and the last one was going to college, I realized, you know, I mean, I was like 45, like, I don't want to be alone the rest of my life. I could date somebody, have some fun. And so that's when I met my husband. Now we've been married 20 years, and I met Matt, and I became a Methodist, and it was so liberating.
Do you think there's something about, like, you met Matt a little bit later in life? Do you feel like you trusted yourself more at that point, and that helped you find, like, a relationship that actually worked for you?
It did, because we were friends, and that was so much more a part. I mean, not that the other stuff wasn't good, but
what do you mean?
Great sex, but we were friends, and it was better because the other two were kind of controlling, and they both were alcoholics, and that was not that. And we just had a better relationship. And I remember my dad. I mean, we talked a little bit about some of the things that he said to me at one point in time when I was dating the second husband. He said, "Cherry, God is going to punish you." So, and those kind of things hit home.
Yeah.
I say that to you.
Sure.
Why was God going to punish you with
because he knew that me and this guy were doing things that he did not think were good. Sex, in other words. So, but then when I married Matt, he told Matt that day, he said, "I've never seen her so happy." But that he was not the only reason I was happy. It was just a better life. It just, you know, we complimented each other. It wasn't like, it wasn't, you know what that kind of, I think you know what that kind of relationship is like. Yeah, it was a healthy relationship where we both enjoyed each other's company, and we were friends, and we both liked to run. So, and that's actually how we met. So it was good. But they all thought I was crazy because he was younger than me. He was 19 years younger than me. So they all thought I had really lost my mind.
And 20 years later,
we're still married.
Here we are.
Look at that.
He's ready to put me on the ice floe any day with a bottle of wine.
Well, Cherry, it caught my ear that the first 2 men that you married were both alcoholics.
They both were alcoholics.
Do you know was there something about that trait that, like, somehow fit into like some slot in your psyche or belief system, or like, do you know why that would have been?
Well, I know I think I was really attracted to dangerous men, and that could have been the trying to escape from the perfect little church girl. I like this naughty boy, and so they were kind of an escape.
So like a reaction, right?
Kind of reaction. Yeah. And then also the first one, I mean, when you're in college, everybody's drinking and partying and having a good time. So with him, I guess, we got married, and I just immediately got pregnant right off the bat, which was stupid, but anyway, I did. And so I quit drinking, I quit doing all the things that we did, but he never quit. So, he was a true alcoholic. He couldn't transition from that college life into a regular adult life. And he ended up dying of substance abuse just a couple of years ago. So
that's a pretty extreme set of behaviors, and it's a pretty extreme trap for a human being to fall into, which just makes me wonder if you felt like you had to go to a pretty extreme length to get away from home base. I mean, that's a big.
It was very traumatic. I mean, that whole year because what happened was he was already seeing somebody else, and I finally got to the point where I was like, he's doing whatever he wants to do. I'm going to do what I want to do. So I went out with this guy one night, and things got heated, and I came home, and he immediately started in on me, asking me all these questions about what I had done and where I had been. And he could lie. He was a sociopath, and he could lie just so easily. I could not. Eventually I told him, and he left the next day and called my parents and told them what I had done.
Oh my goodness.
Whoa.
And so all our friends kind of took sides, and one of them finally told me that she would sign a affidavit that he had spent the night at her house with somebody else.
Okay.
So at that point, because he tried to take the kids from me, he tried to just ruin my life, and that was part of the reason why I went and stayed with my parents, because I had no stable place to be, and I was going to lose my kids, and that really woke me up. But y'all are hearing all my dirty secrets.
Well, I mean, that's pretty intense. If his move was to try and weaponize your parents, that's scary. Frankly,
it was scary, and again, I didn't know for another year that he was already seeing his next wife.
Well, he had to get started if he had that many wives. He didn't have time to waste.
Well, the very very rigid gender roles that are a part of this whole structure, I feel like does not help in navigating how to have a healthy relationship to begin with. So then when you're in an unhealthy one, it's like, well, that's it. Like I'm stuck, and it leads to a whole lot of pain. Unfortunately.
That's very true, because I don't know that I ever would have left him, and I did leave the second one, but I mean, I remember my parents having knockdown drag-outs. I mean, one time my dad took my mother outside and locked her out of the house, and my sister and I were just, in the house screaming and crying. My brother wasn't born yet, but so we saw a lot of things like that, and nobody, well, in those days and times, there were hardly, I don't think I had anybody in my class that had divorced parents. I think one girl, her parents finally did divorce, but for the most part, everybody stayed together.
Were you one of the first people that you knew to get divorced?
Well, okay, I got married in 79, so people were starting to not get married so early. I got married at 23 and had a baby at 24. So I did not know a whole lot of married people, actually, at first. So, and then when my kid, it was kind of interesting. So then my poor children are in a Christian school, and there were a few other parents that were divorced, and so they kind of hung out together, the kids of the divorced people, because they were not really, everybody kind of. I remember my daughter had a first grade teacher who was downright mean to her. and told my mother she should do something about me, because this was when I was starting to see husband number 2. And she picked on my daughter about it. And she was 6 years old.
Oh my gosh.
And it was so funny because my daughter knew how to get her revenge, because the teacher called me one day and said, "Oh, Gretchen has wet her pants and you need to come get her because she doesn't have anything dry to wear." So I got her and I'm taking her home, and I said, "Well, Gretchen, what happened?" And she said, "Well, she was up there in reading group. You had a reading group. Some people go up and others sit at their desk and do seat work." And she said, "Well, she was in reading group, and she told us never to interrupt her in reading group, and I had to pee, so I just did."
Oh.
There was no accident. You know, what we like to talk about on this podcast is change. And the Cherry we know is very different than the one you're describing. And as Erin said when we talked to her,
Yes. I just need a moment with that.
I love the current Cherry. I like the other Cherry. It's very different. But Erin talked about how she never fit completely into the structure she was in, so that kind of gave her some ability to make bigger changes. It sounded like you questioned and rebelled some when you were still in the...
I don't think I ever thought it hook, line, and sinker. There was always something, and again, because all the reading and all the things I've been exposed to, I just couldn't really believe all of it totally. So when I would get these little escapes, like off to college, off to marriage, off to back home, here's another marriage, and then finally moving out with my daughters when they were teenagers, that all those little escapes brought back the real Cherry. I mean, this is me. This is the person I've always been.
Yep, right.
Remember the perfume bottles throwing at the doors.
The non-repressed Cherry is the real one, yeah.
But I feel like you were, when you were growing up and even during your early adulthood, you did what you needed to do to survive and take care of your children.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I didn't have a job when all this happened, and my first husband and I broke up. I was working as a waitress, so I had no money. I had a bomb of a car, and without their help, I don't know what I would have done. And so that's the same thing. You put women in that situation all the time now when there's no help to get out of the hole that you're in, and nobody wants to provide those people with any hand up to get out of it. So I feel for people like that now. Because my parents helped me, I was able to go back to school and get a good job and finally be able to stand on my own 2 feet, and I didn't need them anymore.
What happened with your parents when you moved out and started doing things that they may not have approved of?
Yeah, well, there was a lot of guilt there too, and I just had to distance myself. I quit. I went to that same church for a while. Until I started dating Matt, and then I was like, I can't keep going here. It's just not, I can't sit here and listen to all this crap day in and day out when I don't believe it, and I just want to, live my own life and be happy. So, but my mother still, when I go home, don't you want to come to church with me? No, sorry, don't.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. That pressure.
That cognitive dissonance thing you're describing is like, oh man, it just gets harder and harder and harder to ignore. Like, I can't do it.
Yeah, it does.
I remember Bonnie saying last time that she's worked with so many people who have left high control religions, and that a trait that they seem to share is that even early on, there would be some, like, you can't even help it, like involuntary critical thinking, asking a question, does that really make sense? Does that connect with my experience or my intuition of how things would or should or are be, just really? And that you and Erin, Cherry, I think are good examples of, it was itchy from the get-go, but it was just, sewn to your skin, so you got used to the itch. Just to get through.
Good analogy.
Yeah.
Very good analogy. And I was telling Leslie earlier that at one point in time, I asked my mother, I said, okay, if you ask God to save you and you're not going to go to hell, can you then just do whatever you want to do? And and Aaron said, because we're taught that once you're saved, you're always saved, and God's not going to take that back. But my mother had no good answer for that.
Yeah.
Well, the question is, I guess, if you behave in a sociopathic manner with God, is God going to hold up, God's end of the bargain like a good, trustworthy, business partner, And, if they're not able to think through what would a sociopath do with these terms. Oh man, you're not ready for the real world, religious folks.
Yeah,
it's full of really real pieces of work out here walking around looking to take advantage of whatever whatever loophole they can find.
That's why they believe all this crap. That's exactly why, because they believe, if you believe in a God that's like that, or even God, I would argue even God at all, then you're a perfect setup for somebody like Trump and for other people to tell you that he's God's man, that he's God's chosen, because you've been believing all these crazy things your whole life.
It seems to me like it's a really fair question, though, especially for a child, to say, okay, I did the thing, I got saved. That is in the bag. Now, can I do anything I want?
I was not a child.
That's like legit.
I was like, you're not
Well, that's how long it takes for us to ask a question out loud. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Really, because it's like blasphemy. When my brother died, and he died at 49 of lung cancer, he was in Desert Storm and died of lung cancer because of exposure to the smoke. And at his funeral, his preacher, my brother was a lot like me in a lot of ways. Except he still went to church. It was a little bit different church. And his preacher, who preached his funeral, said that he was a cynic. My mother and my aunt freaked out about that. And I had to tell my mother, I said, he was not saying something bad about him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in their defense, the word cynical means it's got kind of that connotation in day-to-day usage. Cynic with a capital C, refers to a long and storied philosophical tradition that is, meaningful and worthwhile. So, but, not everybody knows about that.
Potato.
Yeah, well, they thought it meant that he questioned God.
Right.
And you don't question God in their minds.
Mm-hmm.
You don't. But, what is God, what kind of rules is he dictating? I mean, they kind of make all that up.
It's interesting, because we're not supposed to question God and what they're telling us God is saying, except that in their own Bible, every character questions God constantly.
Interesting.
That's a good point.
Like, what are we even saying?
Well, and the Bible itself is made, it's... I don't want to do any spoilers, but it did not come down from the heavens in one piece. It was constructed by people who were asking, "What should this say?"
Correct.
So that's a real questioning of the Holy Scriptures, at a pretty
Yeah.
I know. I was going to say, you're being all confusing, Shay.
Aaron was saying earlier, talking about the King James Version. I mean, this is how crazy those people are. That's the only version of the Bible they think is the right version, King James. Well, if you really want to read the Bible, you got to read the Hebrew and Aramaic, not King James.
There's a good point, Aaron, I think, that even if you read the King James Bible, even if that is this is my jam, this is my authority to end all authorities. I mean, you cannot get around everybody. God comes down and goes, "Do this," and everyone goes, "I don't wanna."
Yeah. What? Why?
That conversation happens over and over.
So many times. Yeah.
I would like to, at this point, point out that she knows her Bible. You want to just give us a little bit of your background.
Well,
when people hear you talk, I want them to know your background.
Well, let's see. My bachelor's is in religious studies.
What?
I didn't go to class that much, so
Okay.
you guys. In fact, I just usually tried to do independent studies whenever I could because those were only once a week. And I was just busy with, I don't know, other things. So anyway, that's...
Your dad.
Yeah, well, yes, that's probably a much bigger deal. I was raised by a pastor and a pastor's wife. And Dad was the pastor at United Methodist. And so, yep, I'm a preacher's kid. That's my deal. Went through confirmation, sure. At the end of confirmation, I did say to my dad, who was the confirmation leader guy as the pastor, I said, I cannot get up and definitely swear that this Jesus guy is my Lord and Savior. That's not going to work for me.
Wow.
And what are you
12,
11, 12, 13, something like that. Something like that. And so my parents, their take on that was, well, yeah, sure, that's sure, fair enough. They
Smart on
said,
your part.
they said you do
They
have
probably believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah. They said you do have to take, you've got to take all of these classes because you need to know the tradition that you're coming out of, that you need to be able to know yourself and kind of where you're starting. But no, you don't have to get up and swear anything that isn't right for you. So that gives you some sense of with their theology, which is very open, very, liberation theology kind of stuff.
What did your dad's hat say, Shay? What did your...
my dad's hat. So as I was growing up, he had a button on his hat from the time that I could crawl until I was about this size. And the button on his hat said, "Question authority." And
Right out of the 60s.
yeah, I mean, 100%. I was a home birth in 1973. That's not a thing. That gives you a sense of the people I was born to. Yeah.
They were hippies.
Well, they were a little late to be hippies. They're a little bit old for that. But I do think that as long as you think granola hippie rather than free love and drugs, you got it. Yeah, Mom literally made her own granola the whole time I was growing up. So
I did that for a point in time.
Yeah.
Too.
So does that?
My first marriage.
Yeah, but
That's my background.
But that pastor kid environment is completely alien to the pastor's kids that I grew up with.
Right.
Were coming out of their own skin. They were so regimented and strictly controlled.
Yeah.
I mostly read Bloom County while in church during the sermon, which is disrespectful, but that's what I wanted to do. I had to go to church and I wanted to read Bloom County. And Dad was up at the pulpit and Mom was at the piano. How were they going to stop me from reading cartoons?
Perfect setup.
So that's how we rolled.
Well, I just think we probably should have said that from the very beginning, that, say where we came from, because people can put into context what you're saying. You know about the Bible. I don't know anything about the Bible. And, you can speak more authoritatively. Okay, going back to Cherry. Tell us about when you started making these changes and you weren't buying into a lot of this stuff and you weren't going to church. How was your relationship with your mom and dad and sister? And
Yeah, I mean, it finally it had definitely changed because I wasn't just listening and letting them think that I was agreeing with everything. Now, my dad died before, I'd say maybe before I made my total break, because I even got up and said something at his funeral. I don't even know if I would go to that church for my mother's funeral. That sounds horrible. I just don't want to go to it, especially after Trump. I mean, you think things have really changed. But then that had to be the highest, the big epiphany for me. Now, I already was out of church. We weren't even, Matt and I moved to Charleston. We never went back to church. We have not been since then, except when his dad died. And so here comes Trump, and all my evangelical relatives jump on the Trump train. And it was just, I don't know why. It surprised me. I guess because he was so wicked and evil, I just could not think that it was like a betrayal. So the story I told you is that I was so mad at my mother when she voted for Trump that I told her that I finally said the F word in front of her, and she said, "Oh, Jerry," and I said, "You voted for the pussy grabber. I'm going to say the fuck word in front of you anytime I want to from now on."
I think Cherry is very mature in the way that she stood up. I am serious.
Yes.
She's very mature in feeling her feelings, and I'm sure you're very respectful of your mother. I know you are. No, you take care of her and you call her all the time and you go see her, but you were trying to make a point.
Yeah.
About it's just a word, and yet look what he does.
Yeah,
and
exactly. And she voted for him again. She didn't vote for him. She didn't vote for Biden, but she voted for somebody else, some third party person. But she voted for him again. And we have this conversation almost all the time because she has her doubts about him, but she still voted for him. So when I finally said, "Well, now who did you vote for?" And she said, "I can't tell you." I said, "Well, you just did."
Why did she vote for him? Is it because
it's
her
the religious
minister
pressure? It's abortion. They think because of his stance on abortion, he has gotten them everything they wanted, and they love him for that.
Yeah.
That he's standing up against gay people and trans people, and that there's no abortion, and there's probably not going to be any abortion, and women are going to end up getting killed if they have one, and they think that's great. Now, my sister is very much a Trump fan, and she told my mother that all the Christians are voting for Trump. And I told my mother, I said, "There's a lot of Christians outside of the South, and even in the South, that did not vote for Trump. So you can't tell me that. That's a total lie."
Well, Aaron said it during one of our episodes. Say what you said about how Trump is doing things that Christ would never do, and that you were taught. So you say it.
Yeah, Cherry said it like she's not sure why she was surprised when they voted for him, but it felt like a betrayal. And that's exactly right, because it's like the people you've been surrounded by your whole life teaching one thing. It's like suspended animation. It's like everything went out the window because they were going to get political clout to move the needle on this one issue that they have made the end-all be-all. So it didn't matter that he's a rapist, didn't matter that he's, a serial cheater, didn't matter that he couldn't tell the truth to save his own life. None of that mattered because he said he was pro-life and he was going to appoint pro-life judges. It was like this total 180 on everything I had ever heard mattered except for the pro-life issue. I was like, I don't know how you can do that. I don't know how you can give up all your integrity for this guy and say that that's okay and like square that in your mind. I don't know how you do that.
That's absolutely perfect. And we've talked about this before too, is they were really big. We had missions. We would have a missions week every year at church, and they would bring in all these missionaries from all these different countries, and then they go on mission trips and all that, but yet they don't want these people to live in our country. That one hit me hard too. It just made me so mad that why can't these Hispanics that you love to go see in Mexico, you don't want them to come here?
Yeah, all those poor people, I'll go help them on the Amazon, or I'll go help them in Puerto Rico, or I'll go help them somewhere else. But then the story changes real quick if people want to help their own families and come here for a better life. It's like, I don't know how, it's like whiplash every single day. And like, the guy you say is the savior of your soul would have given these people the shirt off his back and did his whole life. Give everything to everyone who needs it. End of story. This sums up the law and the prophets, to love your neighbor as yourself. And they just threw it out the window for the opposite of that.
And every day we see examples of that coming out of Washington.
Yeah, it's all like, Trump, yeah, I'm going to get me and mine, me and mine, me and mine. And it's like, that's totally apeshit to me. That's totally antithetical to Christ and everything he was and stood for.
And you just preached a gospel sermon there when you talked about Jesus and what his life stood for, and they threw it all away.
Well, and the other sort of main law that Jesus was really big on, there's love the Lord your God, and there's love your neighbor as yourself. Okay, so those are two things. Two is a lot to keep in mind sometimes. If you're really agitated, I get that, but it is only two things. But in those two things, the exact opposite concept is me and mine. It is the polar opposite of both of them, which is a pretty good trick, to be the polar opposite of two different things. Those are some complicated vectors. Good job, in a way. Yeah. But the me and mine is it's extraordinary how seductive it is.
Yeah.
But it is way off.
Yeah.
So what, in the sense of you've made these changes, you've separated yourself from the church, it's had these ramifications with family, but you personally, having made these changes, how are you feeling now? Separate from the whole dumpster fire of America right now, you personally.
I don't even know how to describe that. I mean, I'm carrying a big burden right now because of all of that.
Yeah.
I can't, it makes me not want to even love God. That sounds horrible, but if that's him, then I'm not interested at all. So I just live my life and try to do the right things. And I'm not saying that I don't believe in God anymore. I really would like for there to be a God. I would like for there to be that Jesus that you described. I would like for that to be true. But all of this has made me wonder if it really is.
Actually, the last conversation I had with my extended conversation I had with my mom is if Trump and everything he stands for is what America wants, I don't want America.
And I feel that way too. And we were talking about that earlier, is that I really would like to leave because I don't want to live with these people. It's not so much, Trump was bad enough. Trump, J.D. Vance, Elon Musk, oh my God, they're all horrible. But do you want to live in a country where these are people like that? That want to kill people if they're different. That want to kill people coming in here just because they want a better life.
Right. We're going to have to wrap up, but here's a thought I have, and if anybody else has a thought. Okay, so Cherry and Aaron, you've made these big changes, and it wasn't like you changed where you lived, and yay, I'm in this new place, and it's all great. You made changes that were very difficult, and you made changes that didn't make everything sparkly and fabulous. But you changed because you have integrity and you wanted to live with integrity and live and believe the things you believe in and not stick with things because it was easy for family or for tradition or whatever. So I really applaud you both. It hasn't been an easy road, but I hope you both feel that it's healthy. And
yeah, I definitely do. I mean, I think I have a much better relationship with my children than my mother and I ever had, or my dad, because we understand each other. We talk to each other. We don't have this other thing that's in the way that's trying to shape that relationship that's not even really real. Because my mother's whole thing was, if you're not serving the Lord, you're not doing the right thing. So I'm obviously not serving the Lord in her mind, but I'm very happy with my children, and I can talk to them about everything, anything and everything, and I'm very grateful for that. And my grandchildren too.
Well, good. That's
apart from the church, you have a better relationship with your children, better relationship with your partner, better relationship with your grandchildren, better relationship with yourself.
Yeah, with the
That
world.
says a lot to me. That says a lot.
Seems like it was a good idea.
Yeah.
It was a good idea.
Yeah.
That makes me feel so good to hear you put it together for me because I don't sit around and analyze this stuff all the time. But yeah.
Well,
I
and
think,
if
I
I
think
may
too
say-
much, honestly. I think too much.
The friend group that is assembled around this version of
Yes.
Cherry, if I might look around the room and just go, awesome, awesome.
Yes.
I don't know what I would do without you people. And I've missed you when you haven't been able to be with us.
Aw,
and
thanks,
stuff.
Jerry.
And then I've had times when I couldn't be here, but just especially after Trump got reelected. I mean, it was a good group before, but I mean, if you don't have like-minded friends right now, I feel sorry for you.
And we're just glad that Zoom and FaceTime exist because Aaron's getting ready to leave Charleston and move to Pennsylvania.
Jerry said, "Where's this dog? I hear a dog growl."
That's Shay.
Shay is still hasn't accepted it, but she'll still be with us audio wise. And
Okay, yeah, we need to schedule a monthly Zoom call or cocktail hour.
Sounds
or
good.
something. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, we'll do that.
Going back to be a Yankee.
Okay, well, I bought a giant clock so I'd know how long we went, but you have to pay attention to when it started. So you know when it's time. So hopefully we haven't gone too long,
Oh, we
everyone.
have gone for 50 minutes, I can tell you.
Oh, that's great. Thanks everyone for listening. And remember, if you've made a change or you have some comments, write us at changeishardyall without the apostrophe YALL at gmail.com. Got it right? Did I get it right?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks everyone. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.